Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our remix here, Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Pairings episode. We got a brand new board. We got brand new players that you can pair together and a bunch that you no longer can pair together. So I thought it was worthwhile to go back and we will redo it from the top, just like the first one never happened. I'm Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. This show is brought to you by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. And please, friends, take a moment to subscribe to what we're doing here at Old Man Squad. We're working our tails off. And if you like the video, if you're watching there, hit that like button. I haven't bugged anybody for a 5-star review in a while, but that'd be all right too. Here we go. First and second round pairing guide. That's the title of the show. So that's what you guys get to see on your screen. This is the Yahoo Rank board. That's how we're finding what players are available to you in particular spots. Basically, the thought process is for head-to-head leagues. This is not for Roto. For Roto, you want guys that are going to sort of level each other off. You want not to completely ignore categories, and you generally want to take your favorites because you can kind of piece things together as you go. And head-to-head, you get a team build going, and if you're down near really, 6 through 12, and we'll try to move through the first 5 a little faster, when you're picked 6 through 12, you have to make adjustments to your team build to catch up with those teams in the top 5 picks. They just have better options, and they don't have to do as much cutting and pasting, really, to figure out how to compete at the top. We're looking at board version 4. That was the one from October 2nd for our data today. We will also do, as sort of a PSA, our best to select potential pairings within a reasonable range of targets, meaning I'm not going to tell you, oh, you got Nikola Jokic in the first, you should go ahead and take Steph Curry in the second because he's going to be gone by pick 16 or 17. He's not making it back to you at 24. We're going to look at guys that are going generally with an ADP of like 3-ish in either direction. Or if you're looking at the pre-ranks, and that might be the easier way to go at, 3 to 4 slots earlier, those guys might fall to you, and then kind of infinite slots beyond that. So again, for example, if you had first pick and you went Jokic, for your second pick, we'd be looking at guys going between like 20, 21 through the end of the draft, really, but, preferably not too far beyond like pick 30 or something like that. All right, let's get down to it. Nikola Jokic at number 1. We talked about this on the last one, and it is unchanged. Your best pair is literally anyone. If you want a long breakdown on why that's the case, again, you can go back and watch the other show, but it's also pretty straightforward. Jokic is elite in points, elite in threes for a big man, elite in rebounds, elite in assists, strong in steals. He's elite there. He's great in field goal percent. He's fine in free throw, which, again, you'll take it out of a big man. The only thing Jokic is not that great at is blocks. If you wanted to punt blocks, you could, but again, you don't even have to, because if you get a good shot blocker later on, you could be mildly competitive in that category. And legitimately, with Jokic, you can take anyone and you can build a team out of it. You can just take an example. I probably wouldn't go Chet Holmgren because you give up your massive lead in scoring and field goal, free throw, assists. Rebounds are still good. Blocks get better, but is it enough? That's kind of maybe the only archetype of player that I probably wouldn't go with on top of Nikola Jokic, although I don't know that I would necessarily go center in the early going. Jokic gives you the opportunity to go some kind of guard or wing, and you have such a well-rounded team that it kind of doesn't matter what you do next. You go Amen Thompson. Maybe you're punting free throws, maybe not, but your team is damn good in rebounds, assists, steals, field goal percent. Not that great in scoring anymore, I suppose. But again, like with Jokic, whatever you do with your second round pick, that's kind of what's shaping your team because Jokic is so good in the first. My preference there is to find someone else who's kind of well-rounded, like a LeBron James, a Josh Giddey, a Jalen Johnson, a Jalen Williams. You don't have to lean into anything too hard. The nice thing about a lot of those guys, too, is that they're not great at shot blocking. So if that's the path you ultimately go with Jokic, then you've kind of doubled down on that as well. But I don't want to spend too much time on Jokic. And frankly, I don't want to spend that much time on the first few names, but we're going to go through them one by one. Second name on the board is Victor Wembanyama. Most folks are inclined to go guard build on top of Wemby, but I'm here to tell you that's harder now. On the old Yahoo board, you had some options near the end of the second round. Steph Curry was often falling that far. Looking at other guys that had fallen to that range that have since moved around a little bit. Donovan Mitchell was a possibility there. I don't know how many other guys were all the way back. And now, the last guard on the board in the second round is Jalen Brunson at 20. I don't really like the Wemby-Brunson pairing because you give up your extremely strong start in steals. You also put a pretty big dent into your rebounds and obviously your blocked shots. So if you're going to go guard build, I would love it if Tyrese Maxey could make it that far. Odds are he probably won't, which means you're looking at Brunson, you're looking at a guard coming from the next round, or you're looking at like LeBron as a possibility in there. And the guards that are coming from the next round would be Josh Giddey and Jamal Murray and Franz Wagner. Those are the next three guards on the board. Jamal Murray and Josh Giddey likely have the... Did I say Franz Wagner? I meant Derek White. My brain fritzed out. Josh Giddey's probably going to get you a really nice complement of assists. So he's probably your best option to go with Wemby if the traditional quote-unquote guard build guys aren't there. Giddey, not as good at the free throw line as some of the other guards. Probably not going to score as much as some of those other guards. And then LeBron, he's effectively a guard who has a better field goal percent, worse free throw, but he gets the assists and scoring and threes that you'd normally get out of a point guard. So that's probably your backup options here with Victor Wembanyama. I would not go with a traditional big or a bad foul shooting big to pair with Wemby because right now you've got a big man who's extraordinary in two of the three big man categories, the ones that you generally associate with big. So rebounds, field goal percent, and blocked shots. Wemby is also really, really good at free throws for a big man. So you get a guard stat there. He's also going to have okay assists without having to get a guard to do it, meaning you get that out of position free throw, even if you're not getting as great a field goal percent that you normally get. So you got a big man who's great at shot blocking and rebounding, not field goal, but free throw instead. And that's why people tend to go guard. So like, all right, well, I'll shore up. I'll make sure that my free throws stay good. I have this rare big man who can give me two of the three. And I just have to make sure that at some point down the line, I keep adding rebounds or blocks or both while I pile up guard stats to hold the other guard build teams at bay. Because now, with Wemby, you're competing with like a Trae Young and a James Harden and a Cade Cunningham team. Those teams are going to have a big start in assists, but eventually they're going to have to take a big man, and they're not going to find one as good as the one you have. So your job is, because you've got a shot blocking big that's like two Jaren Jacksons put together, is when they have to go get two Jaren Jacksons, you can just keep adding guard stats or get one more big man on top of it and hold them at bay. But the fact that most of the guards are gone does make this a little bit tougher. I wouldn't be super opposed to just taking your favorite guys at 23. If that's where if you took Wemby at 2, I guess that's the thought process here. But wherever you get Wemby, it'll be coming back to you late in the second round. You can also just take good players in the second and third and see what your team looks like at that point. But odds are you're probably going to be a team that does try to win free throw percent, does try to win blocked shots, and then you sort of figure out which direction you go from there. Whoops, forgot to change the number. Giannis is number 3 on the new board. You can just assume that I got that right. I wonder what happens if I change it in the background here. Can I do this while the slideshow is going? Is it going to actually impact it in real time? Look at that. It worked. Good for me. Good for you, Microsoft PowerPoint. So Giannis is now 3. He and Wemby flip-flopped. It doesn't really change the players you're targeting the next time around, or the range, I should say, you're targeting the next time around. But it does change the players you're targeting because the second round moved so much. This new Yahoo board had a 6-player second-round turnover. And one of them is a really good Giannis pair, and that's Amen Thompson. I think LeBron might still be the best pairing with Giannis because you get the slightly weaker free throw, but you continue to add scoring and assists out of position. Amen Thompson is going to be an interesting fit there, but he doesn't score. So he's going to give you the LeBron rebounds. He's going to give you probably not quite as many assists as Bron. He's going to give you more defensive stats if that's the direction you're leaning, and better field goal and worse free throw, but no three-pointers either. Of course, you might be able to get both of them depending on how your draft shakes out. But let's say again that you're coming back at pick 22 and those guys are available to you. I think I would probably go LeBron as my first choice, Amen Thompson as my second choice. Scotty Barnes and Alperen Şengün are sort of like my B squad to pair with Giannis, and it's possible you might be able to get those guys in the third if they fall that far. Scotty Barnes, a lower percentages guy, but again, you're going to get so many bigs in this build, in a punt free throw build, that having Barnes shooting 46, 47%, that's barely makes a blip. But he gives you assists. Those out of position assists are really useful when you know that Giannis is going to be doing the same thing. And with Şengün, it's a similar deal. You're getting a center who's not the world's greatest at defensive stats, but he's going to give you that combination of scoring and boards and assists and a little bit defensive stuff. And you're not that worried about the fact that he's not a great field goal percent center because you're going to get more later. But what you are getting, again, is assists. And you got to make sure that you stay competitive those in a Giannis punt free throw build, because you're probably not going to come back in three-pointers either. You could try. It's a tall task. You could be not the worst in the league. You could just be like, lower mid-pack in them and hope you stumble into a win in that category every once in a while. But that's why, Amen Thompson makes sense. Then you're punting free throws and three-pointers. It becomes a double punt. LeBron, you don't have to go that direction. Barnes, you don't have to go that direction. Şengün, you don't even have to, because he's a center. You can get some threes out of other spots. What I would not do with Giannis is take a traditional big man in the second round. So I wouldn't go with, say, Evan Mobley at the end of the second round, because you're going to get most of those stats later. And you need to get the things that are tougher to find now, which is generally points and assists. And that's why maybe Amen Thompson is not the greatest, but you lean into it a little bit and hope you can get some scoring from, say, like Zion in the next one. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 4, and I basically wrote a paragraph on him for today's show. But while I'm telling you that, I'm going to remind you guys that the Milwaukee Bucks season win total over at FanDuel is 42.5. Everybody's talking about how Giannis is going to get out of there. I don't know what's going to happen. This is not a number I would bet in at all to save my life. But that number, if you like it, is 42.5 with our partners over at FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. And I also wanted to mention, with once again the caveat that it's not going to change anything I do, but if you like the fact that I do everything forever, free, that's my jam here, I do have a way that you can contribute $1, and it's a Patreon/OldManSquad. Link is in the show description. It's $1. It entitles you to nothing, but if that thing gets big enough, then no one ever has to worry about me doing anything that's not completely free on here. So do it if you like it. Don't if you don't. I'll be appreciative if you do. That's Patreon Old Man Squad. The Shai calculus doesn't change all that much for me. I think if looking back at some of the other ones, I would focus more on who to avoid with Shai, and guys that are bad at both percentages would be the avoid list if you started with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because he's so good at both that it's just silly to detonate two of your finest categories like that. Shai also very good at scoring, also very good at both defensive stats, and he's not bad at threes, rebounds, and assists. He's just not that great at any of the three of them. So you could punt assists if you wanted to, or you could try to get a chunk of assists in the second round and try to get back competitive in that again. I usually end up punting threes with Shai, but there's, again, a couple different directions you could go. So if you went the Steph Curry, Tyrese Maxey, LeBron James route, which is what I wrote on this slide, now you're not punting threes with Shai anymore. You're probably leaning more with LeBron. No real obvious punt comes to mind. With Tyrese Maxey, I mean, maybe rebounds becomes the target. I don't know that you have to punt anything with either of those two guys or Steph, frankly. So if you go that route, you're probably not going to be great in assists. If you go the Steph or Maxey route, LeBron kind of gets you back more competitive in that category. Or you could go the other way. And there's just so many things. Like, Shai is such a versatile dude that your options, not quite Jokic level or even Doncic level, but If you wanted to go Jalen Williams, that's fine. You're still kind of adequate in rebounds and assists, but you're still solid in points, and threes are fine. Steals are very good. Blocks are very good. Percentages are very good. Your turnovers are weirdly competitive for a team that scores as much as you do. And if your next round pick, your third round pick, you can make that choice and think, all right, well, am I punting threes, boards, assists, some combination of the two of them? If you punted threes and assists, you could lean more into a wingy big man build on top of Shai if you wanted. You just have to make sure you get some scoring out of those wings. But those guys are out there. The Jimmy Butlers, the DeMar DeRozans, the Pascal Siakams, who's bigger, obviously, the Franz Wagners. Like, you can build a team on that. And now you're like kind of a weird little punt some of the counting stats. But that's the beauty of Shai, is you can go a lot of directions after that first pick. And that's why I would think just be careful not to screw up the things that he's the best at. Think of it from that perspective. Luka Doncic at 5 has a similar profile to Nikola Jokic, although with Jokic, you can pretty much take anyone and you'll be fine. With Luka, I would avoid Scotty Barnes and Jaylen Brown because, again, you're trying to figure out, am I punting one percentage or the other or nothing with Luka? Because he's going to give you a great start in points, threes, boards, pretty darn good in assists. Steals are solid. Blocks are fine. But we don't really know what to get out of the percentages from Luka. Field goals probably going to come back with him being a bit more slender this year. Free throw could be 80, could be 77, and it makes a pretty big difference because he takes a lot of them. So I would try to avoid Scotty Barnes. I'd try to avoid Jaylen Brown because those guys are likely to be kind of not great in either percentage. And now you're like, all right, well, now I got to be mildly competitive in these, and I don't know what direction to go. I think I would also avoid Jalen Brunson because of the lack of rebounding and steals. He's almost like too guardy of a guard, but that one's not, I'm not quite as married to. Otherwise, I think you can go most directions with Luka, just like with Jokic, and ultimately you'd be okay. And even with Jokic, where I was like, you probably don't want to take a big man. With Luka, you could go big man. Because Luka's not that bad. Like, he's around half a block a game from a guard spot. You could take a shot blocker in the second round, and now you got a weird little build again. What if you went Chet Holmgren in the second with Luka? Now you're competitive in turnovers again? I don't know. It's a weird decision, but you could do it. Rebounds are decent. Scoring's down. Threes are good. Shot blocking's pretty good. Steals are good. A lot of weird choices there. But I do think still that if you're stuck with these guys kind of now you're getting more towards the mid-pack. Like, I really think you just go with your favorite dude in that range. Maybe it's Maxey, maybe it's Curry, maybe it's Giddey, maybe it's Amen Thompson. Probably, if you go Amen Thompson, you're probably going to punt free throws at that point. And I would just take the guys that I don't think are going to be ranked as highly here. And believe it or not, I know that took a while for us to get through the first 5. Those are the ones that I'm less interested in. Cade Cunningham remains at number 6. He did not change on the board, but the options to pair with him did a little bit. Tyrese Maxey's the one that doesn't change. I think if you're going Cade, you're probably going to stack another 6-7 assist guy on top of his 9. You want to make sure that you stay strong there. Cade being better in field goal percent than Trae Young means that you can go guard. And if the Cade guy goes guard, you're probably going to be ahead of that dude in field goal percent, even if the assists are pretty close. But you don't have to. You could go Cade with Maxey or Steph Curry as your guard. You could also go Cade with LeBron James, who's sort of, again, your sort of fake guard to pair with him, where you're going to get probably another 7 to 8 assists a game. So your team is very good in those. Cade's a pretty good rebounder. He was at 6. LeBron got you 8 last year. Neither one of those guys is great at three-pointers, but together they get you 4, which isn't bad. They get you scoring that's pretty good. Steals should be fine, but not great. Blocks should also be fine, but not great. But you're not cooked in anything if you went Cade LeBron the way that you might be if you went like Cade Steph. Although if Steph shoots 47, 48% again this year, then you're back in business. So I think with Cade, the one thing you want to avoid is looking for a high turnover guy. Like, oh, I have to take a high turnover guy in the second round. If you go Cade LeBron, you're probably going to lose a lot of turnover battles, but you're not necessarily going to lose them to a team that might go like Trae Young, James Harden. That team's going to be terrible at turnovers. And catch him on the right week, you beat him. And you're going to beat him in field goal percent and rebounds most likely. So that's why Cade is more, and I'm gonna poop all over Trae Young when we get to him, but that's why Cade is a much better option there because again, he doesn't have the field goal percent massive issue that Trae Young has. He doesn't, and he's better at shot blocking and better at rebounding. So Cade, not my favorite pick at 6. I'll admit that because it does sort of slide you into that turnover guard build, which I find to be somewhat complicated, but it doesn't force you into it the way that some of these other guys do. The guys that I would avoid with Cade, I wouldn't take Alperen Şengün. He does too much damage to your free throw number without helping your field goal enough. I mean, if you're going to go big man, you got to go big man. I know Şengün can get you those assists, but I'd rather just get him another place. You're sort of screwing up your strengths. And then I also I don't think I'd take Jalen Williams. And I honestly don't remember why I wrote this down. I think it's that he's just too... He's the roto choice there because you kick the can down the road in terms of team build. But with Cade, I think you got to make a call who my second round pick is. If I'm going LeBron, okay, I'm leaning into volume. Am I going Steph in the second round? All right. I might not be as awesome in field goal percent. I might not be as awesome in rebounding. I might not be as awesome in assists, frankly, but I got a good start in them. I might be a little bit more well-rounded. Like, you got to make your call in that second round. And Jalen Williams doesn't make that call because he's not a great scorer. He's decent. He doesn't really help your threes. So you might be punting threes now. You might be punting assists after getting a bunch in the first round, or you're just sort of like mid-pack in them. There's just not enough. I need a more polarizing name there, weirdly enough. Anthony Davis slid up to number 7 on the board, and I'm going to give you guys the Adam King build here. I think the best pair for Anthony Davis is Amen Thompson, because at this point, Anthony Davis is such a massive injury risk that you have to build a barricade against an Anthony Davis injury. Now, if he stays healthy, then what you do beyond Amen Thompson might differ. So thinking back to the Adam King build, if you guys missed some of those episodes, I would strongly look back at it. He goes Amen Thompson. He tries to make sure he gets a Sar Thompson. He's going hard defensive stats, like big time. Steals, blocks, such a massive advantage in those that even if Anthony Davis is out, you can still win him. You're not going to probably win scoring because AD's mid-pack in that category for a first rounder anyway. You're probably not going to win threes because he's basically the lowest three-point shooting first round type on the board. You've got a good shot at rebounds if you load up on big men. Free throw percent, I mean, if you wanted to, you could try. This isn't that bad for a big guy, but it's also not great. And turnovers, you should also be trying to win. So like right out of the gate, the Anthony Davis categories you should be trying to win: turnovers, field goal, both defensive stats, rebounds. If you load up on those 5, you might be able to find your way to enough assists to be lightly competitive in that category, but you are likely to lose threes, points, and free throw percent every single week. I find that build to be mesmerizing to watch in real time, but also horrifying to try to pull off, and definitely not the thing you're doing in Roto. So I know this is backwards. Normally I'd say go Anthony Davis in Roto because with the games cap, like who cares if he misses 20 games? It matters. Anthony Davis at 7 and head-to-head is workable because you can beat some of the top teams if you pull off the punt right, even if he gets hurt. If he doesn't get hurt, great, you're in business. Roto, if he gets hurt, your team's just dead. You need your first rounder to play. So generally, I'm not going Anthony Davis at 7. I'm too afraid of the injury stuff. I've turned into a wimp here in the year 2025. Your backup option is Jalen Williams. Similar reason that you'd go Amen Thompson. You get a smattering of rebounds and assists and not a ton of, a little bit more scoring. So you're wasting a little bit of draft capital on points, but you're getting good steals, you're getting good blocks, and you're creating that sort of well-roundedness. You could also, by the way, you could go Jalen Johnson for more defensive stats and rebounds and assists. That's not the worst idea in the world. The only downside there is that Jalen Johnson doesn't have quite as much positional flexibility as Amen Thompson does. So I don't know. I honestly don't know why I didn't put Jalen Johnson on the screen here. I'm going to add him to the Anthony Davis slide while we're talking about it here. Let's add Jalen Johnson. Does that show up on the screen? There he is. Look at that. Magical. Second time we've worked magic. So Jalen Johnson is another one. He might even be more interesting, but like now you got a lot of injury risk up front. I would not go with another risky player in general. So like don't take LaMelo Ball. Not that you were going to do it. I don't think I would take Kevin Durant. And I would not take Jalen Brunson because he's good at exactly all the opposite things as Anthony Davis. He's going to get you, he's going to help your percentages, and his turnovers are also relatively low, I guess. But like, you don't really need the assists, the scoring all that much if some of these things you were likely planning on kicking along anyway. I don't know that I would go Alperen Şengün either because you got to get defensive stats. That's where you're looking if you go AD. Cat slides up to number 8. I'll tell you right now, right out of the gate, I don't want Cat at 8. Yeah, I know I'm rhyming. It is what it is. If you go Cat at 8, despite the fact that everything out of New York suggests that he might be doing a tiny bit less this season, Tyrese Maxey is your best pairing. Just create a solid scoring, three-point shooting, assisting, rebounding, stealsing team that is really not bad at anything other than maybe you could argue blocks. So you might be leaning toward a punt blocks team. And now you're trying to figure out how you get over the Nikola Jokic hump. You're going to probably need to beat the Jokic team in scoring, threes, rebounds, steals, and free throw percent. Maybe turnovers. So there's your options there. You maybe give or take one of those. And that's the direction you end up going from there. If Maxey's not available, which he probably will be, Steph Curry is solid. LeBron is solid. Steph is probably my second choice there. Although if you go Cat, then Steph, you might be thinking about Maxey too. You might punt assists with either one of those teams. You could go Kevin Durant, and then you're definitely punting assists. But I think I'd rather have the bigger start in three-pointers. With KD, you got a percentages juggernaut. Cat KD start is a team I might have a lot of in Roto this year. And then I get a guard in the 3rd and maybe the 4th round. Don't look now, but we may just have started the Dan Vespers Roto team. Cat's a tough one in head-to-head if you think if he fades a little bit. But again, he's not bad at anything. So he allows you flexibility as well. But again, you got to make sure you get the scoring and the threes and the assists coming up pretty quick here. Unless you end up wanting to punt assists. That's the other way you go. What I would avoid with Cat is poor free throw shooting bigs or really any bigs altogether. I would not go Cat and then Mobley. I wouldn't go Cat and then Alperen Şengün. Those are really the only big men going in the 2nd round. I guess Domantas Sabonis is one there as well. I don't think I would go Cat and then Sabonis. So instead, look for scoring, which you're not getting out of those 3 guys. Look for threes, which you're not getting out of those 3 guys. Probably look for assists if you can find them there, preferably from guys that are getting a decent number of steals, so you don't have to punt both of those. And then obviously good percentages is useful as well because you've started out strong in that department with Cat. You might be punting blocks. You might end up punting steals. You might end up punting assists. Those are probably the 3 that you lean with a Cat beginning. Anthony Edwards falls down to number 9, which is kind of surprising because of his durability. He's going to be a first rounder by totals this year, but nobody wants totals, and nobody wants a head-to-head player who's just pretty good at a whole lot of stuff. Now, with Ant, you get a really strong start in points and threes, a pretty strong start in steals, a decent start in free throws, but not great, and not much in the way of rebounds or assists, and also not great field goal percent. The easiest path with Anthony Edwards is to punt assists. But the weird thing there is you still want to get scoring and lean into Ant's strengths with your next selection. So just like with Cat, it's pretty much the same move for me. I'm going Kevin Durant or Steph or Maxey. Those are the 3 guys that I would prefer to pair with Anthony Edwards because you're getting scoring. So now you're over 50 points a game from your first 2 guys. You're over 6 3-pointers. You might even be up as high as 7 or 8 if you went Edwards and then Steph. Your rebounding is not very good. Your assists are not very good. Your steals are okay. Your blocks are okay. Depending on which direction you go, you're going to obviously need a big man. And then if you went Steph or Maxey, your field goal percent stinks, but you get a big man or 2, and that can level that off. You go Kevin Durant. Now, both of your percentages are a little bit better. and you're, again, basically a punt assist guarantee at that point. So I kind of like the Kevin Durant punt assist team. You just got to make sure you get scoring, because if you're leaving assists on the table, you're probably not going to take a ton of high volume guys coming up. So just make sure you get points when you're not then shoring things up. Because eventually you're going to have to take some big men, and then the points are going to take another hit. So you're going to want to get steals and scoring from your guards the rest of the way, and then traditional big man stats that hopefully don't derail your free throw percent. And that could be an Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant starting point. What I would not do on top of Anthony Edwards is take somebody who's hurt all the time, because you just took a super safe guy in the first round. Don't take a shot right after him or your team is cooked. You got a slightly lower per game first rounder, and then you took the upshot guy after that. Makes no sense. I would also avoid drafting guys that ruin what Ant is good at. So don't take a low scoring, low 3-point shooting, low stealsing, bad free throw shooting guy. And I've already given you the names of the guys on the board that unfortunately fit that particular mold. Number 10 is a fresh name on the board in the first round. That's Devin Booker. This is probably about where he belongs. I like a Domantas Sabonis pairing, but honestly, I like a lot of pairings with Devin Booker this year. I think you're going to get a dude who's scoring in the high 20s, like Jalen Brunson. I think you're going to get a dude who's over 7 assists, which is, I think, better than Brunson, or pretty close to Brunson, 7.5. So you're going to get the Brunson starting point with maybe more points, similar threes, but better rebounding, better free throw percent. That might be the biggest thing for Booker. And similarly, the turnovers might be somewhat problematic. So what does that mean? Booker, in my mind, Booker's probably like a top 15 per game guy. I'm hoping he plays in most basketball games this year, but he gets you off to a really strong start in points, a pretty strong start in assists, not a ton of defensive stats, but good percentages and decent enough threes. So if you went Sabonis, let's just say you go down that path. All right, you take a hit in scoring and threes, but you got big time rebounds and assists now between your first two guys. Your steals and blocks are bad. Your percentages level off to both being pretty good. So if you want Booker Sabonis, you might be punting threes. You might be punting defensive stats. That's fine. You can work with that. You kind of have to think about, and for Roto, you're going to try to shore those things up. You're going to get a 3 and D guy mixed in there. But for head-to-head, that may become a player that has almost no appeal to your team. What if you went a different direction? What if you went Booker and, I don't know, Kevin Durant, his old teammate? All right, you got a good start in scoring. Boards and assists can be dealt with. They're not terrible, but they're not great. Steals and blocks get better. Percentage is both very good. You might be punting threes. You might still be punting steals. That's the direction you're leaning in, sort of a non-traditional guard. So I like Booker in this spot. I think he gives you a lot of options, and I think your second round pick is the one that actually decides what your next pairing is. It actually becomes more of like I've got Booker and so-and-so. What do I do in the third round? It depends who the hell gets back to you at the end of the third round, but that's when you start to make your decision on what your actual team looks like. And believe it or not, in this range of the guys coming back at like picks 13, 14, 15, 16, there really isn't anybody that I would avoid. I like all those guys. Sabonis, KD, Donovan Mitchell's maybe not my favorite there, but from a build standpoint, he makes sense. Steph Curry, Evan Mobley, Tyrese Maxey, all those guys work with Book in some way. Mobley creates a balanced team. Amen Thompson might be the worst. Oddly enough, he might be the worst choice there. One of the players I like the most in the second round, but perhaps makes no sense with Devin Booker because the things he's good at all mismatch with Book. He brings the scoring and the threes down. He raises the rebounds up. Assists stay fine. Steals and blocks come back up, but free throw percent comes down. That's the Roto move, I guess, is what we're landing on here. Trae Young at 11. I loathe Trae Young in the first round. I don't like taking him because you have to get a specific set of dudes after that. You must guarantee your wins in assists and free throw percent. And if you don't win those, your team is dead. You are also likely to lose turnovers and field goal percent because if you're trying to guarantee your advantage in free throws and assists, you're probably taking other guys that stink at those other two categories. So Trae Young jams you into a rock-solid hard punt. Meanwhile, he actually didn't score as much as everybody seems to think last year. He was at 24 points per game, which is fine, but not great. Threes were pretty good at 2.9, but again, not overwhelmingly high. There are plenty of guys out there that are in the 2.6, 2.7 range you can get later on. He's bad at rebounding, doesn't block shots. His field goal percent is atrocious, and his turnovers are bad. You have a lot to try to figure out with Trae Young. So if you don't get Harden, now you got to go what? Tyrese Maxey, where your team is very good now at scoring and threes, still pretty darn good in assists. Steals are pretty good. Free throws pretty good. But I don't know how you come back in other stuff. Or you flip the script. You go Domantas Sabonis there, and now you have a team that is worse at the scoring and three-point categories, but suddenly pretty good in rebounds, great in assists, bad in both defensive stats, and sort of like middling in the other stuff. And that's a little bit more of the roto play because now you're just sort of like good. You're fine at almost everything and very good at assists, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in head-to-head. So Sabonis is more the roto play here. Maxey is the backup guard. Harden is certainly the preferred guard. I didn't put it here, but you could even reach and go LeBron super early if you wanted to get the assists with some rebounds and a lot of scoring. And you can kind of salvage the field goal a little bit and make it more of a punt turnover team. I just really don't like doing the Trae Young build because you must get the big men who score and get steals and assists and don't have terrible free throw percent. And there's like 4 of those, and you're going to be fighting with 3 other teams to get each of them. What I would not do if you were to go Trae Young in the first round, and I probably am not, what I wouldn't do is ruin your free throw percent. So take a wing who stinks at free throw percent because now you're getting this well-rounded guy who just hurts you in some stuff, or a guard that doesn't get steals. So I'd be pretty careful around like a Jalen Brunson, even a Devin Booker, although you're not gonna get Booker coming back. Steph is a little bit risky. His steals were better this last year, but they'd been trending down before that. You got to make sure that if you go Trae Young, the guard category that tends to be the toughest for those teams to win is steals. So you better get a chunk of them with your next guard. Before I give you player number 12, I want to remind you guys that this show is brought to you by a number of places. We talked about FanDuel already, but also Fantrax. Sign up and play fantasy basketball at Fantrax at our special link in the show description. It's fantrax.com/oldmansquad to sign up. That's how they know who sent you. It doesn't cost you a red cent. Not one. Not even one little penny to sign up over at Fantrax to enjoy fantasy basketball and all fantasy sports the way they were meant to be played with options. Configure them the way you like it at fantrax.com/oldmansquad and by our friends over at HOF app. I can do this one. And the HOFapp.com. This is it's an app or a website, depending on what you want to do, that uses data, tens of thousands of data points to create projections off of trend lines, matchups, and all sorts of other things that you don't have to do the millions of hours of deep dive to get into to make you a smarter, better. Get rid of the weakest leg of your parlay. Build the money lines that win you week-to-week wagers. And for a limited time, our listeners here get a 7-day free trial and 50% off their first month with the HOF app using promo code SQUAD, SQUAD. Just download the HOF app on iOS or Android, enter code SQUAD, and you're all set with a 7-day free trial and 50% off the first month after that. Those are our 3 partners here, FanDuel, Fantrax, and HOF. All right, let's get to number 12, and we'll wrap this bad boy up. That is James Harden, who enters the top 12 for the first time, and this is where he belonged to begin with. I put a few different thoughts here on Harden. There's the Harden guard build, where your best non-Trae Young-y option is Tyrese Maxey, because you sort of add on top of what Harden's already good at. You actually cover up some of the stuff that Harden's not as good at, meaning Maxey gives you scoring in a spot where James hadn't given you all that many. but you get steals on top of what Harden gave you, which was already very good. Harden is also an excellent rebounder for a guard. He's at 6, just like Cade Cunningham, up at that much better number. His defensive stats are excellent for a guard at 2.2, and Tyrese Maxey's were also at 2.2. So you sort of pile on top of it. You have a great free throw shooting team. Maxey's turnovers are not that high, so you're now looking at just a solo field goal percent punt, most likely going forward. You have enough assists to compete with the Trae Young team, even if perhaps they might be out in front of you after round 1. But the beauty part is you don't necessarily have to beat the Trae Young team in assists. You have to beat them in scoring, threes, steals, free throw percent, turnovers, rebounds, blocks. You have all these options that you can take them down with, while at the same time beating the non-guard build teams in the guard categories. So yeah, you might lose one or two of the guard categories to the Trae Young team, but you're likely going to be better than them in every big man category on the board, which is 3 at least. So if you lose 2 guard categories to them, but you beat them in 3 bigs, you win that week. That's why I like James Harden up there with Cade as like, those are the preferred guard build guys. Cade maybe a little bit better because he has the higher scoring mark than Harden. But I like James's big free throw number. So, I'm splitting hairs a little bit there. Both guys decent defensively. Harden gets a little bit more than Cade this past year. But those are the guys you should start your guard build team with because you're not totally iced out on all of the big man categories. They are both adequate enough. Harden in rebounds and blocks, Cade in rebounds, blocks, and even field goal percent. And, again, Harden gives you the better start in threes and free throws. So a little bit stronger in the guard stuff. But to me, either one of those guys makes more sense than going Trae Young there. Oddly, what I would avoid in head-to-head with James Harden is a well-rounded player. So you're not looking for someone who gives you a little bit of everything. It's time for you to pick a lane. So go Maxey, who's very, very good at guard stuff and not as great at field goal percent. He is weak there. Or go I don't know. You could go, what would happen if you went Steph Curry? Similar to the Tyrese Maxey situation, not quite as strong in steals, which is a little bit problematic there. But again, not a great start in field goal percent. What I would not do is find someone like, Jalen Williams is probably your poster boy for the well-rounded second rounder. So now you're not that good in points. You lost your advantage in threes. Your rebounds are still not great. Your assists are not great enough. Your steals are pretty good. What does that do for us? Weakens the free throw shooting. Not a big enough positive in field goal to help us there. Don't go well-rounded. Pick a lane with Harden and head-to-head. If you want to go Harden and Roto, fine. Then you can go well-rounded, or you can mix and match with a big man or whatever. But head-to-head, I think you want to pick a lane and roll with it. I mentioned the alternate build type here on Harden as well. If you went James and then picked a big man, so you go Harden and then Sabonis, and in that build, you're probably punting points, among other things. Or you could go Harden and then have Evan Mobley, and you might also be punting points there. But those guys get you back in the mix in field goal percent. Mobley, both of them hurt the free throw number, but Harden got you off to such a strong start that you're still sort of a little bit better than average. But like Domantas Sabonis and James Harden together, you're off to a great start in boards and assists. And you just have to figure out what other categories you can get up to the great department after that. If you go Mobley, you're in a great start in blocks. Rebounds at that point are pretty good. Free throw is still excellent. Assists are not quite as great. And again, those guys maybe make more sense if you're going the Roto avenue, but it's not like going Sabonis doesn't make you a perfectly well-rounded team. A Harden Sabonis team is still weak in scoring and turnovers. You just you pick a path. That's what I'm saying here. Pick a path. Go Sabonis and punt points, or go Sabonis and punt turnovers. I don't care. Go Mobley and punt points. You guys know me. I love a good punt points, but with no Halliburton around, I don't have my main guy. And that's it. That's your new pairings board. Hit me up on Twitter with questions at Dan Vespers. In the meantime, please subscribe to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. There's a button on your screen no matter how you're taking in this show. Hit it for me. If you're watching on YouTube, like on the way out. 5 stars also helpful. Find me on Twitter at Dan Vespers, DanBesbris, or Old Man Squad if you want the network feed, which cleared 3,000 followers. That's pretty cool. Pretty happy about that. A lot of good stuff going on here. Again, Patreon is Old Man Squad. My Google Sheet in the show description has everything that I do 100% for free. I already mentioned with the Patreon, again, totally optional, but that is a way to ensure that I can always do it for free 4 or 5 years down the line even. But right now, no plans to switch anything. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Dan Vespers. You got your pairs. You asked, you shall receive. See ya.